This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. How was your week? How was your weekend? Are you getting back into the groove, the work groove, after the Thanksgiving holiday? Or are you just checked out till 2018? I feel like most people just check out. The music industry definitely is checked out. But that does not mean we can't still put out hot shit for you guys in December. My remix for Axwell, I Found You, just came out last week. It's out right now. So when you're done listening to this, if you have not checked it out yet, go hop on iTunes, hop on Spotify, hop on the Pirate Bay, whatever. Go check it out. Axwell, I Found You, Willy Joy remix, and I'll put the link to that in the description of this show. Just as an FYI, I'm recording this intro a little early this week. Your boy is going to be traveling overseas for a couple weeks, so I wanted to record these early just to make sure everything would be uploaded before I left. Everything would be straight, so you guys would get the episodes right when you want them. So all I'm saying is that if anything crazy happened in the world in the last week, anything in the music industry that went nuts, I don't know about it. That's why I'm not talking about it. Your boy is on a trip. And if you want to know where, you can listen to this episode and find out. But man, forget about me. My guest today is Seven Lions. Whew! Never met him before, so I was really stoked to do this interview. We had a great time talking, and Seven Lions is being pretty active for the end of the year himself. He just put out the Where I Won't Be Found remix pack earlier this week. I got a preview copy of the EP. It's really good. If you're a Seven Lions fan, you're going to love this. Not only that, Seven Lions also just put out the Observatory mix, and it's crazy. I didn't even realize this. It's the first official mix from Seven Lions that he's put out in his whole career. Not a live set, not a mix for someone else, but just his own Seven Lions mix. It goes along with his Spotify playlist, also called The Observatory. And long story short, the whole observatory concept is a symbolic place in the world of Seven Lions. And when I say that, if you don't understand it, keep listening, because you're going to hear a lot more about this idea in the conversation that we had. We talk about how he's kind of world building right now, kind of going beyond just music and creating a whole conceptual art space where his music can live. It's really dope. Not many artists are thinking on this level. Yeah, we just had an awesome conversation. So stay tuned for that. Before we get into it, I just want to make sure everybody listening is subscribed to the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, man, it's easy. Just click the subscribe button on whatever app you're using to listen. If you're on the Back-to-Back SoundCloud, just follow that account, and that's it. Boom, you're done. You're in the club, you're in the gang. Gang, gang. Don't forget to leave us a rating and a review on iTunes if you like the show. That rating and that review, that's the best way you can help this show to grow. And hey, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think of the new remix. Let me know what's going on in your life, what you're working on. Let me know what you thought of the last few episodes. Anything. I love talking to you guys. Backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address, or you can hit me up on all social media @WillyJoy. Holler. All right, moving on. The contest to win a copy of FL Studio is back on. This is the last week that we're going to be doing this. We've had such a crazy response so far. It's been awesome to give away some copies of FL Studio to some aspiring producers. I'm really excited about helping young musicians. And since this is the last week, another big shout out to FL Studio for linking up with us to do this giveaway. It's really dope to see a software company reach out to young producers like this, help the up-and-comers. I think that's really valuable, what we all need to be doing. And if you haven't won your copy yet, right now is your chance. Here's what you got to do. The last couple contests we had have been on Twitter. A few people complained because they didn't have a Twitter. And so for this last one, we're going to switch over to Instagram. Instagram contest to win FL Studio 12. Here's what you got to do. First, go and follow the backtobackpod account on Instagram. Follow us there, and then you need to make your Instagram post. And we're going to make this one a little fun. I want to see you guys get creative. I want you to tell me who you would want to see appear on this show as a guest. And you have to put it on Instagram. But how you do it is up to you. You can make a little drawing. You could literally just write the person's name on a piece of paper. You could make a video telling me who you want to see. You could make some crazy Photoshop, turn it into a meme, turn me into a meme. Anything you want. It's a completely open field. The only requirement is that in the caption of the post, you have to put somewhere hashtag backtobackpod. If you don't put the hashtag, we're not going to be able to find the post. At the end of the week, we're going to search that hashtag. We're going to compile all those posts and pick a winner at random to get a copy of FL Studio 12. So make sure you have the hashtag in there. Get creative. Have some fun with this one. I'm looking forward to seeing who you guys want to have on the show. And more so, I'm just looking forward to seeing how you guys tell me on Instagram. Get posting, and somebody's going to win a copy of FL Studio 12. All right, so let's get into this conversation with Seven Lions. I met up with him in Los Angeles at his hotel right before his big show with Kill the Noise and Tritonal at the Palladium. They did this cool tri-headliner tour all through this winter, and you'll hear us start off the conversation talking about that. But from there, man, we went all over. Really interesting guy. He's definitely coming at the industry from a very unique position and unique viewpoint. And that was something I was really interested to talk to him about, is that, you know, he kind of has this aesthetic. Obviously, the music, he kind of blazed his own trail with that. And just the look of everything and the presentation of everything. It's one of the most cohesive all-around brands, or whatever you want to call it, that I've seen from any artist. And it's an impressive feat. We talk about that, the value of flying your flag alone in your castle, the value of kind of stepping out on your own and really building your own world that people can come and live in. And I just really enjoyed talking to him, man. This was a conversation unlike a lot of the others I've had on this show. He had a great perspective. It was an awesome talk. I think you guys are going to learn a lot from this. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it right now. This is me and Seven Lions, back to back. Let's go. Is this the start of this tour for you? Or is this kind of the middle?
It's the beginning, but we've already done 2 shows.
Okay.
So.
How's it been going so far, man? I was really psyched when you guys kind of put that whole thing together.
Yeah, it's been good. I like hanging out with Jake, so we get to spend a bunch of time together,
Jake's
which is
the
good.
best, man. Yeah,
he's a really good dude. And the guys from Tritonal are awesome too. So it's just been a lot of fun so far. I feel like we're very much at the beginning though. So
yeah, how much longer does it go?
All the way until December.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a pretty good run.
Yeah, definitely.
I was psyched though, man, because I feel like in so many dance music tours now, you get to a certain level, and there's a lot of artists who are only willing to do shows or tours with people not on that level, you know what I mean? And to me, when you guys came out with the sort of 3-headed tour of all you guys together, it reminded me sort of the old metal tours they used to do back in the day. Of, you know, they would put, say, whatever it is, Metallica and Slayer on the same bill, and they'd go around the country. Yeah. And to me, though, I don't know, I grew up going to those kind of shows, and as a fan, that was always the most rewarding to go to for me. So when I saw you guys doing it, I was kind of stoked.
For sure, more value that way, definitely. And it creates a whole night, you know, not just like one headline act, for sure.
Right, yeah. And it makes it less... It's less like it's an egoless tour, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like just, hey, we're having fun. We like each other. Like, it's a good vibe, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you meet Jake?
You know, I honestly don't remember. I think it was probably at a show or something, but we've like stayed in close contact ever since. I know he's into video games just as much as I am, so we nerd out a lot. But yeah, and then we just started talking about doing a track together, and just slowly over time, it definitely didn't happen overnight.
Right. Well, and he's the kind of guy, too, where I feel like there's always 8 million versions of a song, and he has trouble, you know, saying it's done.
Definitely.
Which, are you that way, or are you able to kind of walk away when you've finished something?
By the time I'm done with a song, I usually absolutely hate it. So like I get to the point where I just can't work on it anymore just because the way that I feel about it. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, where are you from originally? We were talking you live in Washington now. Where did you grow up?
Lompoc, California. So close to Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I grew up in Lompoc.
What was that childhood like? Is that like kind of, in my mind, that's kind of a small town beachy vibe.
Yeah, it's small town known for its prison and its Air Force base.
Right, the prison. That's why I know that.
Yeah, totally. But it was cool. My dad is a musician, so he always had like instruments around the house. So that's kind of what I remember a lot of.
What kind of musician?
He plays like everything. He plays. Well, right now he plays sax in a band, but he plays piano, guitar, drums.
Was he doing it as a career when you were a kid, like touring and all that?
Just for fun. He did tour when he was younger, though. Like he was in a band called Storm, I think it was, and they did like a California tour. And
yeah,
it's cool to be able to relate to him on that level. But he didn't do it professionally. Like he plays now for fun on the weekends and stuff.
Sure.
With a band, and they love it. I think so. They live in Florida actually, and I think that's why he likes it so much because there's like a big live music scene for Jimmy Buffett cover bands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right up Dad's alley.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you kind of grew up then surrounded by music, instruments around the house, did you start playing? Did you start kind of doing it yourself at a young age?
Yeah, probably middle school, I guess. Like I was in bands and stuff in middle school. I played drums, and my dad actually brought home Pro Tools to like start recording his own music, and then kind of taught us how to use it. So I was fortunate to have Pro Tools like when I was 13 or 14.
Yeah, that's really early, especially for Pro Tools.
Yeah, definitely. So that was cool. We were like, making CDs when we were like 16 and listening to them in the car, and that was definitely.
You're putting something to tape and burning it. Yeah,
totally.
That's pretty cool, man. And how did electronic music come into your purview at that time, or was that later?
So basically, a buddy of mine gave me a cracked version of FL Studio, and like I didn't even like electronic music at all, to be honest. But I realized I could make music on my own without a band, and my biggest struggle at the time was being like the band dad, like
herding
getting
cats.
everybody to practice, and I was just really sick of that. So I realized I could make music by myself, and that was a really cool thing. So
had you had exposure to electronic music up to that point?
No, not really. No, and even then I was just kind of like making weird music. I didn't even know it was like electronic music it had no like genre or anything like that. And then when I was moving away to college, my cousin gave me some Tiesto CDs, and that's kind of how I got into it. I think It was his, I forgot. It's a CD, and there's like the light side and there's a dark side mix. It's like a double CD
I saw
thing.
that.
So that was like the first one that got me into it. He has that remix of Innocent, the Delirium song. Is like the one that opens up the whole mix.
The big one, yeah. I think I had a separate trance compilation CD that also had that. That was one of my first really early releases. And so at this point, when you're heading off to college, were you thinking about music as a serious part of your life, or was it still kind of just for fun?
Well, I wanted to be a studio engineer. So I actually went to school for engineering. I have a bachelor's in sound arts. So I always wanted to be involved in music in some way, but not the front man, that's for sure. I never planned on being like a professional musician myself. I always wanted to be in the studio.
Right.
Or like even doing like sound design for video games or any kind of that stuff, scoring movies. I was interested in all of that. So that's what I went to school for.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, first of all, how did you find school for those kinds of production techniques? Because I think it can be really hit or miss.
I mean,
with different schools.
Yeah, like a lot of the stuff I could have learned on YouTube, but that's kind of the way it is with everything now.
Yeah.
It was cool to have, the hands-on experience with big mixing consoles and like, tracking rooms and learning, I learned a lot about how to treat my own home studio, which was cool.
Sure.
That all came into play for sure. But, there was a MIDI aspect of it as well that wasn't very useful.
Yeah, no, I had a similar experience. My takeaway was that I enjoyed it, I had fun, I learned a lot, but in the long run, it maybe slowed me down a little bit. Like I probably could have gotten to what I'm doing now a little faster had I not been there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then again, I don't know. Some people do better in school. I was a nerd when I was a kid. I liked being in school. I liked having that structure.
I think it's also getting out of your hometown. For me, that's what was the important factor. If I hadn't moved away to college and
Where did you go?
Expression up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So I lived in Emeryville for like 2.5 years.
Yeah. So it's kind of just broadening your horizons a bit too.
Exactly.
Meeting some new people. Did you go all the way through school, come out with a degree, and kind of have to figure it out from that point? Did you try to become a studio engineer?
It was a really weird experience for me. My college years were not like the best years of my life by any means. I just wanted to get out of there. So I ended up moving back to where all my friends were, which was Santa Barbara. And there's not a lot in Santa Barbara as like an audio engineer. Like, what are you going to do? So I ended up working at a hotel doing like live audio stuff for PSAV.
Sure.
So definitely not your dream job when you get out of a college like that for sure. But
yeah. Well, honestly, man, I think that's a lot of people's experiences. You find out that degree is not worth what you or whoever paid for it.
Yeah, I'm still glad I did it, but yeah.
No,
I know
100%.
Yeah.
What, for you, you said it wasn't your favorite time. Was it just kind of a culture clash, not your people kind of thing?
I think I was like the youngest person in my class by a good amount, and I wasn't 21. I moved like right after high school as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really ever like meet anybody in San Francisco. Like I had like one friend maybe, and I just didn't connect there for some reason.
Yeah.
But
it
all my
happens.
friends were in Santa Barbara, so I would actually like drive down on the weekends all the way to Santa Barbara, which is kind of far for just a weekend.
Yeah, it's fun, man. There's a lot of similarities, weirdly, because I did the exact same thing. I was going to school also for engineering, basically in Providence, Rhode Island, and all of my friends were in Boston, which was like an hour and a half away or so. And every second I wasn't in class, I just drove to Boston and, maybe sold myself short because I didn't really get the college experience of the college I was attending. But you got to do what makes you happy, right?
Totally.
So once you were back in Santa Barbara and doing the live sound gig, were you producing at this point? I mean, still tinkering around?
For sure. I think that's kind of when I first started doing like actual releases. I was on this trance label called Elliptical Recordings.
Okay.
Just producing as Jeff Montalvo.
Okay.
I think that must have been
making trance?
Yeah, 2008, 2009 maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I was doing.
All right.
I wasn't DJing or anything, just kind of...
Sure, yeah. Well, I was going to ask kind of at what level, like did those releases, did you kind of have an expectation when they came out? Were you trying to make a career out of it? Or hoping?
No, I mean, I guess you always kind of hope, but like it wasn't like a reality or anything. I think the furthest that project ever went, Tiesto played one of the tracks on Club Life.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, super stoked. Other than that, like, I couldn't even get booked at the local bar for sure. I remember giving actually one of the bar owners like a CD mix and being like, yeah, and he never called me back.
Oh, man. So had you played out at all?
So we had some underground parties that were not legal by any means, that we would just kind of show up places and set up some speakers and play. So for friends, for sure, but never professionally.
Right.
There was even like an actual dubstep crew in Santa Barbara while I was kind of just starting producing dubstep, and they wouldn't even book me for their parties ever.
Wow.
Yeah. I was friends with the guys, but like they were like...
Didn't think of you that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, shout out to the Santa Barbara dubstep crew, man. That's a weird combination of influences.
Yeah.
Going from there, did you reach a point where you kind of made a conscious decision to start a new project, or did you kind of just realize that maybe this one had run its course and you needed to do something different if you wanted to keep putting out songs?
Yeah, it wasn't too conscious of a decision. I think basically I just started writing music that was much different than what I had before, and I just called it something new. Like I had no idea it was going to turn into what it did, so I definitely wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start a new career and this is going to be a thing.
Right.
Yeah, it was just making a very different sound. I was trying to actually, in the beginning, a lot of the dubstep stuff I was making was super inspired by Opeth, and I was recording a lot of guitar and stuff like that.
Because you have kind of a metal background, right?
For sure, yeah, definitely. That's still what I listen to most, to be honest.
I guess, you were making this new music and kind of, it sounds like no expectations on it, just doing something you enjoyed, something new. And the first time the public really heard this was a remix contest, right?
Yeah, yep, for You Gotta Go.
That was Above and Beyond?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's interesting to me, just thinking about it, because I always think of remix contests as a scam. Like, I would never tell somebody just starting off that what they should really do is do a remix contest.
Yeah.
But then you can't argue with this example. I mean, it's really interesting. How did it play out for you? You just submitted the song and...
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't even planning on submitting. I just wanted Zoe Johnston's vocals, because that, when you're making music at that level, the hardest thing is finding a good vocal to work with. Yeah. So I just ended up, downloading the stems, and I ended up finishing it and sent it in. And I was just like hoping to maybe crack the top 10. And I remember I was at work and I logged on to see, and I won, and I was just like, holy shit. Like,
was it the kind where people would vote, or was it the group picks the winner?
It was both. So there was a popular vote, and there was a...
right, people vote in a certain number and then they pick from that.
Yeah, Above and Beyond had to pick one.
Right. That's pretty interesting, man. I mean, and I think throughout your career, there's been sort of this interesting mix of styles in your music, but also in the people you work with and the people you're associated with. And it seemed like from very early on, I mean, the remix contest being a good example, that the people making trance and progressive house and that sort of thing really embraced what you were doing.
Some of them did.
Well, yeah. I'm sure there were some who were not too into it.
No, there was quite the backlash for
really?
Sure. I think, honestly, my whole career has been marked with people, like, upset with the music that I make, which is...
Really?
It's kind of strange. I mean, maybe I just see it a lot because I actually get a lot of it directed towards me. But yeah, early on, for sure, trance people were not happy about trance and dubstep becoming a thing. The dubstep people never really cared, but, like, the trance kids were, like, super upset.
Yeah. Isn't that an interesting thing? And I think this happens in music across genres, is that I think what is considered to be, quote unquote, like a lower form or a less classy form, like, say, dubstep or that kind of thing, those are usually the people who are more accepting of kind of other styles and other sounds, whereas, you get, say, a trance person or... And I'm generalizing, but, it just seems like there's certain scenes that won't have any mixing. I don't know, we'll just hold their nose up at it. And a lot of the times, to me, it seems like those are the ones that consider themselves kind of more enlightened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know techno's very much like this, too.
Yeah, techno's for sure like that.
Yeah. But I like techno, so it's cool.
Oh, I love techno. I mean, for me, that's one of the weird things that I can never understand is I love techno. I love the deeper side of house and tech house and all that sort of thing. If I go out, which is very rare these days, but if I do, that's what I would want to go out and see.
Same,
And then, we make music that's much heavier and crazier and wilder. But it bums me out sometimes that I would go to a techno show and then the techno guy wouldn't go to my show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just different. I think, when I go out, I want to kind of just be in my own little world with my wife, and, like, that's where you go, like a techno club for sure.
Yeah.
You're not, like, it's not over.
Do you go out when you're not?
No, hell no. Hell no.
Yeah, I don't.
I stay at home. I hang out with my dog and we just chill.
Yeah. Small town life?
Small town life, yeah, very much so. There's like one bar we go to. Well, it's a brewery we go to all the time.
Right.
But other than that, that's kind of like going out for us, for sure.
It's interesting, and, I don't know you well enough to really make this assumption, but you seem like pretty chill, quiet, introspective guy, polite person, which is how I'd like to see myself, too, and it's weird to have a job that requires us to go out all the time.
Yeah. It's good, though. I mean, it balances. I think doing the whole music thing has definitely changed me as a person, and I think in a good way. Like, I appreciate my quiet time a lot more now, but I also feel like I have the skills to, like, interact with people, which I really didn't before, because I was like so introverted before. And this whole thing has very much like forced me to become more of a people person.
Yeah, it definitely does do that. I mean, for me, sometimes that also brings in some anxiety to it.
Oh, yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah.
I still get like super anxious. And, like the big shows, like the EDC is like, definitely, like I'll be nervous for an entire week leading up to it. You know?
Right. Well, and there's multiple components, right? Because not only are you doing this big show in front of all these people that, has implications on your career and all that kind of stuff, but then it's also going to be a DJ convention, right?
Yeah.
So even when you're backstage, I feel like a lot of people still feel that they have to be on, you know what I mean?
Totally, yeah. And it's also a really weird thing for me too, because like I travel with my wife and she always has her friends around and they're like, in party mode because it's EDC. They're having a good time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm smiling and happy too, even though on the inside I'm about like ready to throw up in the trash can, because I'm like so nervous. So it's definitely like a really interesting kind of line to walk between being like really honest about how gnarly I feel or just smiling and being like, everything's fine.
Right, yeah. Yeah, my solution is that sometimes I just have to like just go sit down in a corner in the green room and kind of be with my own thoughts. Which is another, then people are like, well, what's wrong with him? But all of that bitching aside, I would agree with you that it's definitely given me skills to live in the world that I didn't have before.
Yep.
And so getting back to kind of the arc of where your music took you, what happened after the remix contest? Was it a blow-up kind of situation where all of a sudden a lot of eyes were on you?
It kind of seems like that. Mayon and Shane 54 hit me up to do the remix right after, and then Tritonal hit me up right after. So, yeah, I just got a lot of opportunities really quick. And then a manager came knocking on the door, and that all worked out.
Yeah. Still with him?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, but they were very, very much helped me out in the beginning. They were like really hardworking, like go-getter kind of people, and it was right what I needed for sure.
Yeah. It's the different kinds of managers are always interesting. I was just talking with my manager about this, is that, some managers are really good at the nuts and bolts, like let's build this project kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then other people are really good at the big picture stuff. They can get your song placed in some crazy place, but the last thing they want to talk about is, kind of day-to-day strategy and that sort of thing. And it's funny, you see when an artist and a manager find a really good pairing together, and then you can also see when it's kind of just at odds.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find. I mean, I think a lot of the listeners of this show are probably trying to get into the music industry in some way or another, would like to be involved. And I never really know what to tell people as far as finding the right people, because it can be really hard without experience to know who's on your level and who's not, It's
like any other relationship, though. Like it is very hard to tell for sure, because you don't know if it's good for you. You don't know if you break up, basically, and you have to go looking for somebody else, if they're going to be better or worse.
Right.
It's like there is no really good advice with that. I think you kind of just got to see who works best, and if it's not working, you got to find other people,
Yeah, be open to other ideas. Don't get too stuck, and do shit with your friends, I think, if you can.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of like really successful management teams come from just being friends in the beginning.
I think that's true.
Cool.
So, for you, once you had the manager, you had some eyes, you were doing some remixes for people, networking with other artists. How did it evolve from there?
Got a booking agent and started playing some shows, and then...
What were those first shows like?
Let's see. My first like fly-out gig was in Denver at this place called Cervantes.
I know Cervantes.
Yeah. And it wasn't very good. So like with the whole Denver being a mile high thing and all the good beer, I immediately went and like had 2 double IPAs and didn't think about the altitude thing.
Nice.
And like took a nap right after, got super sick, and like had to play the show, and I was just like a zombie. It was really bad. And there was not a lot of people there. So that was like my first show experience.
No, that's a great first show story. A lot of learning all in one.
I remember throwing up in the green room before I went on for sure. But so I just kind of, started playing shows. I actually never quit my job at PSAV just because I didn't know how long it was going to last.
Interesting.
So my boss is a really cool dude. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do this for a little while. Keep me on just in case, it doesn't work. And
right.
I'll be back. And I ended up not going back. But like I had no clear idea that it was just gonna continue going. It was always just kind of like, we'll see how this goes and how long it lasts. And
sure, from one goal to the next, and just
exactly.
one foot in front of the other.
Totally.
So how did your first original music come out? How did that come about?
Aside from the Jeff Montalvo stuff,
Right, I meant as Seven Lions.
The first record label to put out my EP was Viper Recordings. They're like a drum and bass label. So they gave me my first shot, which is really cool. And the EP was called Polarized.
And it seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your aesthetic is so strong, and the branding across almost all of your releases across almost all the years, it's very consistent. Was that something you guys came up with really early on, of this really strong look to everything and being really consistent? Yeah,
so basically it wasn't always that easy, but yeah, when we first started, when we were working on the EP Days to Come, the management team that I was with, Ro, he knew I was really into like video games and books, so we were kind of like discussing what we wanted to do. And he knew this concept artist, this guy named Locked in a Box, I think his name is Chris, and he hooked us up. We did that EP, and then we just kind of stuck with that.
So the same guy's been making the art the whole time?
Well, so when I switched management, that connection got severed.
Right.
So we kind of went through a few different people, but we're finally back to Chris now, which is really cool.
Because I think that's really rare, man, and I think it's been very valuable for you and for anyone who's able to take that example, is to be that consistent with your branding that early on, and to have this identifiable aesthetic that people can feel like they're kind of coming into a whole world, as opposed to just a guy who made a song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, also a lot of that has to do with our art director, Daniel. We hired him maybe 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
I actually met Daniel at Burning Man our first year, and we just kind of stayed in contact, and I knew what he did for a living. He does, branding campaigns for like all kinds of different things. So we just hit him up to see if he was interested, and he's been with us ever since. He's very much like a part of Seven Lions.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's maybe another good point to make, is that what are any of us without the team?
Oh
really,
yeah, totally.
And how much work goes on behind the scenes just to make any artist, be a viable project that people can really follow and get into.
Yeah.
My eyes kind of cross thinking about it, because it's all these tasks and all these jobs that I would be so bad at.
Yeah, that's the thing, hiring help when you need it, for sure.
Yeah.
And delegating, that's one of the things too that's been kind of hard, because I'm a bit of a micromanager. So as the team
how do you deal with
grows,
that as it grows?
it's not easy.
Yeah,
I mean, just take it as it comes, but trying to delegate things so I don't have to micromanage has been very helpful. My wife helps me a lot, which is great. And the new team that we're working with management has been doing a lot of the social media stuff, so I don't have to worry about it, which is great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The social media component is my least favorite.
Yeah, I think most people really don't like it. And
Yeah.
I know I very much don't like it. I hate to be the guy who wakes up and the first thing I do is check my phone. I feel icky about that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, phones have rewired our brains and changed the way we as a society interact. That's undeniable, but at least for me, I notice when I have a day where I don't pick up my phone, those are usually happier days, just in general.
Totally.
And it's hard because with what we do, I mean, so much of it is tied to the digital space, right?
Yeah, there's no way around it. I know for a while I kind of wanted to very much step back from social media, but it's always been kind of a hard thing to navigate, because you want to be putting out enough content to be interesting, And if I was to personally step back from Seven Lions, which I've thought about doing quite a few times, and just letting the art kind of dictate.
Oh, and having it not be so much about you as a person or your face or whatever.
Totally, yeah. And I think, ideally I'd like to get to that point someday. And I think the whole way to get there is just to do more artistic stuff, have more content that's purely art-based.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Well, that's cool. I never really thought about kind of would you build, I mean, this is maybe something you haven't even gotten to yet, but in terms of building a whole narrative around something, or, a story or a character or something like that.
I think we're actually very much working towards something along those lines.
Awesome, man.
For sure.
That's a
Yeah.
cool idea. I really like that as a fellow nerd.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. And you said before we started recording that in those early days you felt like one of the big stumbling blocks you hit was that your music was really hard to define or hard to characterize.
I think it still is, but earlier on it felt like very difficult because I think, my booking agent was kind of struggling with, do we put him on the bass stage? Do we put him on the trance stage?
Right.
Like main stage doesn't really make sense yet because I wasn't doing I didn't have any songs that were very popular. So early on they were just kind of like, what do we do with this guy,
Was it hard to pick up fans or just people who liked what you were doing that way too?
I don't think it was a problem with the fan base. I think it was a problem with where do you put me in a live show, on a lineup? You know, the first year I played EDC was on the bass stage, which, does make sense. I do make bass music, but I was also playing, trance on the bass stage. So,
right.
And I think back then that was kind of, even now it's still a little weird, but back then it was like really weird.
Yeah. I think people have evolved to where you kind of expect a DJ to play a few different styles at this point. But that being said, I think you're right that, it's that classic dubstep versus trance thing again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, people get a little touchy. How did you find it as far as working with different labels and kind of having outside entities understand what you were trying to do? Because at the time, I think it's worth saying that really I can't think of anyone else who was doing what you were doing in that way, which is all, those are the people who I think tend to have long-term success, but it can be hard in the short run to make people understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the record labels have always been pretty free to let me do whatever. There was only a little bit of with Casablanca, we'd finish a song and they'd be like, that's a cool vocalist, but what if we have like a pop singer do it instead? And I never did any stuff like that. But other than that, there's never been a label that's kind of like dictated, musically what I do.
Was it Ausla that came about after Viper?
Yeah, so Ausla did my second EP.
And how did you get introduced to them?
Just my manager back in the day. I think Skrillex was playing some festival in Germany, and my manager is a German dude. So he was at the festival, and he got his way backstage and met Sonny and gave him a flash drive or something that had my EP on it, and then then it worked out. So
yeah. Well, that's great, man. I think I was thinking about this on the way over too. Is that your career and I think your brand, I hate using the word brand, but I never know what else to say. As an artist, you exist in kind of your own space that you've carved out for yourself. It would be hard for me to pick out a bunch of other artists who are kind of doing what you do. And on top of that, I think you managed to do it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it seems like you managed to do it without a lot of the big cosigns or a lot of the sort of squad mentality that you see a lot of days.
I've been very much outside of that. My closest squad I'd say is the Anjuna team because but even then I don't fit their brand at all really. We make it work, but I never was part of the Ausla crew or I don't know. I don't live in LA.
Right.
I lived in Santa Barbara at the time, and I wasn't gonna come down and party and be a face. Just be one of the people that you see always together. I just never wanted to do that. I live a very private life with me and my wife, so I'm not definitely never did the whole crew thing. Sure.
And I never did either. It made me happy to kind of watch your rise because I've never lived in LA either, and I live a similar kind of lifestyle. It was, the just going out and partying was never really my thing.
Yeah,
and not to shit on the people who do, but it's.
I just don't like the politics behind it, the whole who hangs out with the most powerful person in the music industry gets the most. Whatever. It's just I
the most
hated
gold,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. It has nothing to do with music at all. It has to do with basically fucking circle jerk. That's what it has to do.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And it's kind of weird. You'll see, the Skrillexes and the Diplos of the world, all those big guys. Every once in a while they'll kind of have someone they're grooming, and that one person will appear with them everywhere.
Yep.
And then after a month or two, they kind of move on. And I always wonder, what happens to those guys, you know? Sometimes some make it, some do great,
Yeah.
but then I can also think of another half that I don't know what they're doing now.
Totally, yeah. It's super strange. I think that's kind of one of the reasons I ended up not working with Elsa for much after that EP, because I just wasn't playing the whole who's best friends game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess they were sort of your first bigger label you worked with, right?
Definitely.
Were they able to kind of accelerate things or do things on a bigger level you hadn't been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, putting out the EP with them definitely was the right move, and it helped me a ton for sure. Having Skrillex's support early on is definitely something, like he tweeted about it, which was dope.
Yeah.
But I think also I just didn't want to get stuck under that umbrella because I knew I wasn't going to play that game. So I, got an opportunity to sign with Casablanca. So I ended up just trying that out for a little while. And, that was an interesting experience because they're a major label. And I don't think
hit or miss there.
They wanted pop records and I'm not making pop records. I guess Strangers was the closest to a pop record. And they kind of signed me off the back of Strangers thinking that maybe I was going to make a ton of those. But that's not how my music has ever been. I don't really try and repeat the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they were wanting. But they were, nice to work with. But I knew kind of after maybe 6 months that I had already lost their interest, basically.
Right. And at that point, I think a lot of people's experience working with the majors is that once you lose their interest, they're just kind of not going to really do much for you at that point.
Totally.
And you weren't in some kind of crazy long contract or anything like that?
We were, but we both mutually just let it go.
That's
I
good.
think they had a 9-month option and we were just kind of like, we're not doing another one. So,
and from there, kind of leaving first of all, I guess I should ask, I mean, working with a major, did you learn anything that you didn't know before or pick up anything that you've been able to use later we them do what they do?
It made me very sad about the state of radio.
Really?
Yeah, that's the only thing. I remember there was some days where we went around and actually learned how songs get put on the radio because we were meeting the kind of people that put music on the radio, and it was the most depressing. I remember getting back to the hotel room and just being like, wow, what am I involved in? And
because that's yet another kind of circle jerk, right?
Well, it's like this whole, you pay some guy who knows people to call different radio stations and have them push your song to these people, which that doesn't really make any sense. And then also there's this they do market testing where they'll place a 7-second clip of a song and whichever gets the best reviews or whatever of 7 seconds of a song, which is
a little
mind-blowing.
Focus group?
Yeah. So those songs are the ones.
That.
Yeah, those are the ones that get pushed harder to the radios, and just stuff like that is how do you judge a song in 7 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I just realized I didn't want to be a part of it, so I just
Well, the radio ecosystem in general, I mean, it's been fucked up for so long. I mean, there's historical stories about the payola days, which, as far as I can tell, never really stopped. It just kind of went back underground a little bit. And I don't know. It's a weird time, not to go too far on a tangent, but to me it almost seems like now with Spotify, we're almost seeing echoes of that again, where it's not payola, but it is starting to be about, kind of gatekeepers again. And
that was what was cool about SoundCloud, is I think it gave the ability for a bunch of people who had, they weren't required to go through any of that shit. They could just put out their music and, tons of people could hear it. And it's so sad to see the downfall of SoundCloud, because without SoundCloud, I don't think I would have a career.
I definitely would.
And even YouTube has kind of the gatekeeper stuff with the YouTube channel is kind of, if the YouTube channel likes it, then it goes on and gets millions of hits, which is, it's cool. It's a great opportunity, but it also is, there's somebody there kind of judging, does this work or does this not work?
Yeah, I mean, it is really sad to see what's happened to SoundCloud. I mean, they kind of brought it on themselves, but at this point, I think about a young kid just starting up. I don't know where they go. I don't know how people hear the music at this point without some kind of cosign that we've already talked about as being kind of a shitty way to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, there is still SoundCloud though, so people can still do it. But it's not as easy as it was for me. I think I got really fortunate,
and I think the
right
returns are lower with SoundCloud now. I think it's just too oversaturated, and the reposting is out of control.
Yeah. And I love Spotify, though. I use it a ton, but I also realize, like, if that was my only option to get my music out, how would I have done it,
Right. And I love it too. Yeah. I don't mean to talk badly about them. I think, they've sort of revolutionized a lot in the industry.
Totally.
But yeah, it's just a weird time, man. I don't know where it's all headed. I don't know where kind of the people, God, to use another overused word, the disruptors come in anymore, because for a while you could bootleg somebody's music, sample somebody's stuff, steal it basically, and fuck it up in your own way, put your own stamp on it, and a lot of people could hear it right away.
Yep.
And I always liked that as someone who was never really classically trained and kind of just figured out what I knew from piecing things together. I like to have that avenue, but I don't know.
For sure.
I mean, maybe it just means kids will make more original music now to try to look at it on the positive side.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. But the thing is, they're going to have to go through record labels now, whereas they didn't before.
That's true.
If you want to get on Spotify, you need distribution. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's still how it goes.
What about like TuneCore or something like that?
Oh, like self-distribution?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you can do that, but like, I don't think those
It's
things...
a rough road.
Yeah, like I don't know anybody who's done that successfully. I know Bandcamp has had some success.
Yeah. Bandcamp is an interesting outside option. And certainly, I think literally bands have done really well with Bandcamp and had some success stories there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bandcamp for electronic music never really got going.
Yeah.
I know Carmack uses it, a couple other people, but not really a viable option. Well, on that downer note, you went through Ausla, you went through Casablanca, you did the minor label to the major label, and off of the major label, what did you come away wanting to do? Was it more of an indie mindset?
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, throughout this whole experience, I ended up building up my team around me like really well, because I think the labels promised a lot of things they didn't deliver on. So I ended up just, that's why we hired an art director, because like
they weren't going to.
That was the kind of stuff that they were like, yeah, of course, sign to us. We're gonna do all this stuff so well, and it was like they didn't. So then we hired, our art director, and then, it's just my manager. Like they're the ones who are getting the vocals and stuff now. They're the ones who are like helping network with other artists. It's not so much the record label. So
you brought it all in house.
Yeah, and so what's the point of a big record label at that? And you can hire these pushers if you want too. Like the people that we would hire to push like a record would be the same people that the record label would hire. So what's the point to even having one?
I mean, I think you could say, what's the point in having a label at all in 2017?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're moving right now.
And all along there, you were starting to tour pretty heavily, I would imagine.
Yep.
How did you find that part of the work, being on the road all the time, being gone a lot, the planes, all of that?
It was really rough in the beginning. And then around the time of the Cruella tour, I think in 2013, my wife quit her job and started traveling with me all the time.
That's
and
nice.
I think for my mental health sake, that's like what saved me and allowed me to like keep doing it. Because there's no way I could have kept doing it. It was like really rough for a while.
In terms of anxiety or being away or...
Yeah, all those things. Like when she's with me, it feels like home, kind of. It's not the same as home, but like it definitely helps. But yeah, it was just too much saying goodbye all the time and like coming back, and just every weekend wasn't fun. So.
Breaking up the routines. And
totally.
I was just talking to someone the other day about how this year I've been off the road more than the last several years. And in a way, it's been nice because I get my home routine, I get my studio routine. But then when I do travel now, I come home and I just feel like a crazy person, because you get used to sort of living out of a suitcase and always doing things on the fly. But yeah, once you come back and kind of live more quote unquote normally for a minute, you realize how crazy the demands of those schedules are.
Just the lack of sleep and the always being in airplanes and the drinking. It's like I went and had my checkup with the doctor and was just kind of telling her about like, the lifestyle, and she's like, whoa. Like
doctors don't like to hear that.
Not good.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly like the sleep schedule. I think we're we're pretty punishing to ourselves because we want to get home as early as possible. So we end up taking the earliest flights.
Right.
And a lot of times that means like going straight from the venue, like in maybe 2 hours in the hotel and then straight to the airport. So like it's not a lot of sleep.
Yeah, it can get really rough. I was talking to Josh, formerly Flostradamus Josh, now Yeah Me Too, and he was saying the exact same thing, that every time they would go and do their Vegas residency, he would be on the 6 a.m. out the next day to get back to his wife and kids, and that after a while, he felt it was just kind of destroying him, and he ended up taking the like early afternoon flight instead of the 6 a.m. And he said that for him made all the difference.
Really?
And, and just that he could be better when he was home, when he, had a little rest.
That makes sense.
And all of that. And it's all about whatever it is for the individual, just sort of hacking the schedule as best you can.
Yeah. I think the cool thing is, though, like, my wife has, like, a really good attitude about it. And our VJ, he travels with us everywhere, Ian. And a lot of people who have been to my show know Ian because he does the visuals and he's like a super animated guy.
Yeah.
So like it's always us in the airport at like, 4:30 a.m., like barely awake, but we always kind of like pick each other up.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really good. Like we have a really good relationship. So.
And is your wife involved in the business at this point?
Yeah, she's the tour manager for sure. And she helps with kind of like everything.
Right.
Like I don't really do the social media stuff, so she's always the one taking the pictures. And she also, was really involved with the fan group. Yeah, she helps me with all the financial stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you talk about it, it's obvious you guys are a unit,
Yeah,
and it's
for sure. I was actually in New York for Izu, and she stayed in Seattle to go to a festival, which is like the first time I haven't traveled with her in forever. And I felt like so weird being without her. And we did an interview with Geronimo from Sirius, and he was like, "Where's your wife? Like, what's going on?"
Right,
because
she's become part of the group at this point.
Exactly. Everybody knows that we're always together. So.
Yeah. Well, and I love seeing that, man. I mean, to me, that's like the 2017 future version of the family business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something people have been doing for hundreds of years, and it only makes sense to me that it would work out in a situation like this. That's already kind of tough on the individual if you're at it alone.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And I've known Emma since I was like 13, so like we've known each other for quite a while.
A lot of history there.
Definitely.
That's great, man. And do you, when you're on the road, is that a process you enjoy? I mean, obviously playing a good show is fun, but just in general, like, do you like the lifestyle? Do you like the travel, seeing places?
No.
Yeah.
No.
That was kind of figuring out.
I definitely do realize it's a great opportunity, and I enjoy it though. Like, but if it's not like my first option.
Right.
I like being at home, but if I am home too long, I definitely will kind of get a little antsy. So I think it has kind of become a part of me for sure, being on the road. And when we do go places, we're the kind of people who will take an extra few days to hang out, especially if it's overseas. Like, we've spent a lot of time in Japan and a lot of time in Europe. Like, when we were there last year, we ended up just going to Prague this year. We went to Prague for a little while just to hang out.
Oh, Prague's beautiful.
Yeah,
man.
I loved it. So we take it as, like, it's an opportunity, it's like a great way to see the world. So we definitely do. But, like, we have so many air miles just, like, packed up for, like, maybe one day we'll want to go, like, travel for fun and a not work related thing. But, like, the amount of air miles we have that we just don't use to go on vacation is kind of absurd right now.
Yeah, I've had that. I just booked my first non-work overseas vacation.
Oh, nice.
I'm super stoked in years. But even booking it felt so weird. Like, as I was like typing in my credit card or whatever, I was like, wait, why am I booking this flight?
Where are you going?
Tunisia, actually.
Oh, okay, Tunisia.
Yeah,
Wow.
North Africa.
Right on.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. My girl's out there, and
Cool.
yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
And, it's kind of to bring us up to more current times. I don't want to overshadow, all these different releases you've done, all these interesting people you've worked with. Where are you at with music and with production now? Like it seems to me that your output's been consistent sort of your whole career. Going forward, I guess my question is, are you just trying to keep going, keep building it, or do you have bigger plans for what's on the horizon?
In 2018, there's going to be a lot of changes for sure. I think we're taking things into our own hands a lot more, so we get more control, which is good. But I'm not going to like announce too much about it right now,
Sure.
But we're definitely like look for the beginning of 2018 for some cool stuff that we've been working on a lot lately. So like I said, more content, not necessarily more songs, because I'm not going to just like start crapping out songs,
Right.
But if anything, I might actually be doing less songs and just, trying to make them higher quality.
Sure. I think that's a lesson anyone could use.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, I get a lot of ideas when I'm on the road, and then I'll get home and I'll work on it for a little bit, and then I'll go away and then I'll work on it for a little bit, and I'll end up having like a ton of half-finished songs, and then I feel like sometimes I don't put the polish on them that I should.
Right.
And I think that's because I've been trying to like package together EPs, and I think if I kind of step away from that, I'll be able to give these songs more attention.
Well, and it seems like most of the music that comes directly from you. It's not a ton of collaborations like you would see some other artists doing.
Yeah.
And you work with a lot of vocalists, obviously, but in those scenarios, I would assume, you still have a lot of that control and a lot of the work is being done by your brain,
Yeah, recently I have been doing some more collabs though, just because of that, like, I have been traveling so much, and I'm not the kind of person to like get a ghost producer. So I'm gonna like work with people that I like to like, help make more music. I think that's what the interesting thing about a collab is, like sharing the workload and like getting the help to finish songs and stuff like that. So
is that a process you enjoy, bringing people in like that?
It depends on if I like working with them for sure. But like, so Jason Ross, we actually have 2 more songs that we worked on, and we actually finished them before our group therapy show, which was cool. Certain people I just work with really well, and I think Jason and I work together super well because we work in stems, like on waves and stuff.
Oh,
and
okay.
He'll shoot me stems, I'll work on it, and vice versa, and it just works out because I don't know. I think he always brings something to the table, which is cool. You know?
Well, and I always like printing to stems or printing to audio, and especially in a collaboration format, I think it gives you, instead of just sharing a session where you can just kind of move every tiny little fader and whatever, it gives you kind of this very simple, concrete thing to work with, and simplifies a lot of the decisions, at least for me. I'm a big proponent of printing to audio.
Same, for sure. You can just do so much more with it than just MIDI, for sure. I mean, if you like what you have, print it, for sure. Because, I mean, how often do you really go back and redo stuff? Like, I know I don't very often, so.
Yeah, I'm not huge on that either. How do you deal, you work so much with vocalists and songwriters and that sort of thing. In those situations, what is the workflow like? Do you come up with a whole instrumental for them, or is it more collaborative?
It's always different. Generally, I'll like get a song halfway finished, like all the way up until the drop, and then at that point, I'll send it out to a few different vocalists, and then get ideas back, and then go from there. Sometimes it comes back perfect. Sometimes it comes back and it needs a lot of work.
Do you ever change the song based around what they send you? Have you ever gotten one that sort of changed your idea of what the song was?
Yeah, well, that's why I wait to start the drop, is because it really kind of dictates how I'm going to finish the song, and the structure of it all. So it definitely does change for sure. It'll change the vibe of the track.
Yeah. Before we go, is there anything else we haven't covered that you want to get out there?
I don't think so. I feel like we did the whole career. And
pretty much, right? Yeah. Well, one thing I ask a lot of people before I end this, random, simple question, you don't have to think about it too hard, sort of first thing that pops into your head, just a time in your life, it could be from a childhood, it could be from a week ago, when music really, in a moment, meant something to you or really affected you in some way. And that could be, gave you goosebumps. It could be made you cry. It could be, made you smile. Just anything off the top of your head.
There was a point in my childhood, I guess in like middle school years, that I wasn't getting along with my family. So I ended up living with my grandma for a little while. And I remember listening to like punk rock records and just like that was the one thing that like kind of made everything okay at that time because it was really not a good time in my life. And it's definitely like one of those like music, saved my life in a way for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great. I have some similar stories from that time period. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, being an angsty kid and listening to punk rock is like, it just definitely made me feel like invincible and that I could like handle shit.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It wasn't, because for me too, it wasn't that I'm so angry and, I want somebody to be angry with, but it did. It gave me confidence.
Exactly.
I really like that. Well, hey man, thank you for sitting down and having me over and doing this. This was really cool to get to know you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right. Peace. All right, that's the show. I want to thank Seven Lions for having me over, sitting down and talking to me. He's an inspiring guy. I wish him all the best. I'm really excited to see what 2018 brings along for Seven Lions. Shout out to all of you guys listening at home. My name is Willy Joy. This is Back to Back. I appreciate you. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at backtobackpod@gmail.com, or you can holler at me at all social media at Willy Joy. Hit up your boy. Don't forget my remix for Axwell, I Found You, is out right now. Check the description of this episode. I'm going to put links to that and to where you can find all Seven Lions music and tour dates right in the description of this show. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next Tuesday. This is Back to Back. Peace.